Hey everyone, it's Dick here. Today I'm riding the current iteration of the Duke 690. The 690 is a 6-speed, chain-driven, liquid-cooled, 693cc single-cylinder engine. KTM is the only manufacturer I know that rounds down the engine capacity on its model names, and that earns them a lot of credibility in my eyes. It mounts a balancer shaft to limit vibrations, which will be welcome on a single-cylinder engine. It has a 43mm inverted front fork and pressurized gas monoshock under the seat. It has ABS-assisted top-spec Brembo brakes with a 320mm single front disc and a 240mm rear disc. It has 34-inch seat height, which is on paper tall for my 31-inch inseam, but we'll see how that is in practice. The Duke is famous for its boy racer looks and is probably responsible for a large percentage of young men starring as bikers. I'm not ashamed to admit that the original Duke, along with the old Goldwing, were the bikes that drew me in. Let's see if it lives up to my long-held expectations. KTM 690 Duke. Getting my bones rattled. It's funny, it's another one of these bikes that's like playing the game of let's find the brake pedal. I gotta literally lift my foot up off of the foot peg, turn my toe in, and then bring it down on the brake. And the same thing with the gear shift pedal. It's really high. It's tilted really high. And I think that the gear pedal is probably more of an adjustment issue, but the low profile of the brake pedal is very disconcerting. Lots of vibrations on this bike. Lots of vibrations. Mirrors are bouncing, handlebars are vibey, seat is vibey, foot pegs not so much. Another issue I have immediately from getting on this bike is this display. It's like an early iPhone that you can't see in the sunlight. And it has one of those shiny plastic covers over the top that catch the sunlight, so you have no idea what's going on your display. I really don't understand what the benefit of these types of displays are on motorcycles. What is wrong with just a couple of dials and some needles? This display is useless, so it's not even worth looking down at. I'm getting used to lifting my foot to use the brake though. Engine's nice and powerful. It's a 690. It's probably just shy of a 690. My foot's off the peg to shift down to first gear. So I'm resting on the gear selector as if it's my foot peg. Short first gear like the other KTMs I've been riding. Second gear has lots of pull. Single cylinder. Brembo brakes are nice, as always. It feels like this bike wants to be ridden like a dirt bike. You're sitting like right up against this really short tank. You're kind of riding it like a dirt bike. The single cylinder engine sounds a lot like my friend's Moto Guzzi. Very tractor-like, very industrial. A bit rattly for my liking. I'm getting really good at lifting my foot for that rear brake. I was saying in another video that I haven't really ridden a lot of KTMs because there was never a KTM dealer that was convenient to kind of where I lived, where I could get to. And that the KTM dealers that I could find when I was living back in the States were always connected to a lawnmower dealership or a chainsaw dealership, some sort of kind of work equipment. And riding this Duke, I can see why. This is like farm equipment, this thing. It's got the look of some sort of sci-fi spaceship, but it rides like a tractor. It rides like some sort of riding mower. I mean, you can't fault the power. It's very powerful. It's very snappy. I gotta lift my foot on that brake. Taking my foot off the pegs to handle these fucking pedals is just asking for trouble. Suspension's really stiff. I was asking the KTM guy, I said, where is this made? I assume that the 390 is made in India, along with the Husqvarna, Svitplan. And I said, where is this one made? And he's like, this one's made in Austria. You'll notice the difference in quality. I'm not sure I do. I think I actually prefer the 390. I love the spring-loaded turn signals because they just look like a sex toy vibrator bzzz, on either side. Oh my God! I need a kidney transplant after that hit. Holy crap! Oh, I hit a manhole cover 40 miles an hour. And the suspension is stiff. Really beefy handlebars. You think they'd be heavy enough to stop these vibrations? It really does ride like a dirt bike. You put your foot out, yeah. You know, I always thought that the Ducati Monster and the MT-07 were kind of chasing the legendary KTM Duke. And I always wondered why you didn't see more Dukes on the road. Why? Was it just the fact that they didn't have the market presence to get more Dukes on the road? Because a Duke is one of those bikes that when you first get into motorcycling, you're like, that's a good looking bike. I'm going to have a Duke. And then you don't see a lot of them around. You end up buying another one because there's a dealer near you or, you know, I don't know. You just don't see a lot of them on the road. And after riding this thing, I can see why. I think I'd like this bike better if I had a vagina. Because it's ribbed for your pleasure. What the hell? It's a fun bike in what it is, but I don't think it's a daily rider. I don't think it's a city bike. It's definitely not a Sunday stroll bike. You have to work a little too much, and it's a little too characteristic. It's got too much personality. Ooh, it doesn't like the gravel. Yeah, the short wheelbase reminds me of the Ducati Monster, but it makes it a bit squirrely. Ooh, back end kicked out on that gravel a little bit. Skid risk. Ain't that the truth? Yeah, you definitely feel like this thing will skid out from under you. I don't feel like I could drop a knee, as it were. Not that I do that all that much. Yeah, I think this is like a dirt bike for the road. I think it's a road legal dirt bike. It feels very kind of squirrely and jumpy, and it's not I don't feel like it's a road biased bike. It doesn't feel like it was born to the road. Yeah, and you know, there'll be somebody that says learn to ride and I can do this on my Duke and blah blah blah. But you know, you gotta have a relationship with your bike, and if it's a working relationship, if it's like that, you just gotta work too hard to have it do what you want it to do. It's just, what's the point of having it? There are more fun motorcycles that are easier to use. Seat height is fine, but you're sitting so far forward on this tank. What the f***? Okay, well, ABS works. Fucking pile of gravel right there. Yep, short gears. Maybe that's a characteristic of KTM's. Now, I don't understand why you have such short gears, but your engines don't like to rev so high. Very, very stiff. Seat height's all right, but like I said, you're sitting on top of this tank so far forward that you're not really taking advantage of that. Oh, that's rear shock. It hurts. It sits a little taller than I would think a naked bike would or should. Stopped at a stoplight, it feels taller than it... Oh, fuck. It feels taller than it needs to. It is what it is. And these sculptural things don't... Once you're sitting on it, they don't feel as cool as they look. I can see why there's not a lot of these on the road. This Magura hydraulic clutch is nice, though. It's really easy to pull in. It's unlike other hydraulic clutches that I've used that are really heavy and you kind of get fatigued using them over time. This has a really nice pull and a very small reservoir, so that is a nice touch. That's a nice feature. They sell those. Magura sells those secondary for people to replace cable clutches. And other than it being really expensive, after using this Magura clutch, I'd consider that. This lifting my foot to brake and shift is getting really boring. I think there'll be some that say this could be a city bike. I think a 690 city bike is overkill. If you're not having this be a commuter, a highway commuter, or something other than just a city bike, this thing is overkill. And it's a little too industrial for my liking for it to be a city bike. And I have a sense, just listening to the fan's kicked in a couple of times since I've been riding it, and I have a sense that this bike might have a tendency to overheat. I have to look into that, but the temperature gauge is about halfway, but I can imagine if you're sitting in city traffic, this thing could overheat quickly, because this fan is kicked in a bunch of times. I was resting on the brake pedal as if it was a peg, and so the bike wasn't moving when I was trying to accelerate. I'd have to adjust those down. I'd assume they're adjustable, but tipping my toe in for this brake pedal is a real pain in the butt as well. So, God, lifting my foot to shift, so stupid. Interestingly enough, red line on this is 9,000 RPMs, but it doesn't have that red blinky crap when you hit 7,000 RPMs. Or maybe it does, I can't see the display. Alright, tick the Duke off the list. That's a big fat no.
If you like that video and you want to see more like them, hit like, share, and subscribe.